I'd taken 3 steel ribs to the torso, shielding Elias Voss 7 months prior. The internal bleeding ate through my stomach lining bad, enough I'd spent 4 days post-op hooked up to 4 drips, barely able to stand without blacking out. None of that slowed Elias down from replacing me before my stitches even scabbed over. I first saw Clara Hale storming his penthouse bedroom the night I closed a $42 million wholesale jade contract single-handed. I'd raced over with assigned paperwork, adrenaline masking the stabbing pain in my gut, and slammed the door open without waiting for the goons posted outside to clear me. The sight froze me mid-step, contract clutched so tight the paper crinkled under my fingers. Elias had her pinned flat against a headboard, her thin, trembling hands braced against his chest, big doe eyes wide and watery like she'd been dragged into something she couldn't handle. I'd spent 7 years walking through gunfire, knife ambushes, federal raids, and desert torture cells for this man, and in that single second, all that weight crashed down on my shoulders so hard my vision blurred. The kid flinched when she caught my stare, burying her face against Elias' collarbone, and he snapped his head toward me with a rage I'd never once pulled out of him in 7 years of life-or-death fights. Get the hell out, Neov. You have zero respect for boundaries. He dragged a silk sheet over Clara's shoulders, shielding her from my gaze like I was some feral stray crashing a private moment, not the woman who dug him out of a hitman's trap 6 months prior, the woman who traded an eye to save his life back when we were both broke nobodies scraping for our first industry foothold. I leaned against the doorframe, lit a menthol cigarette, and inhaled slow to ground the sharp burn in my chest. His security team had already whispered the whole story weeks back. Clara had been sleeping with him for 2 full months before I stumbled in unannounced that night, every single grunt and underling in his LA compound calling her Mrs. Voss, behind my back like our 7-year partnership meant nothing at all. I vanished for 7 full days after that fight, and no texts, no calls, no check-ins at the gem warehouse, no trace anywhere Elias Network could track me. The company's senior investors blew up his phone begging him to locate me. Without my combat training and syndicate connections, half their cross-state shipments were sitting unguarded at risk of hijacking, but Elias didn't spare a single manhunt crew until the 3rd evening. He drove alone up to the mountain estate he bought me with our first payout, the property tucked into the Angeles National Forest, the only place I'd ever considered mine in a lifetime of drifting from mercenary camp to battlefield. He found me leaning against the balcony rail, cigarette ash spilling down the front of my oversized leather jacket, staring out at the valley lights stretching miles below. The polished leather loafers under his tailored charcoal suit were a gift I dropped off for his 42nd birthday 6 months back, a small luxury I'd scraped together even fresh out of major abdominal surgery. He knelt beside me on the concrete, plucked the cigarette from my fingers, and crushed it under his shoe without asking permission. "You're throwing a tantrum over nothing," he said, tone flat, like my years of sacrifice counted less than a 22-year-old undergrad's frayed nerves. "Clara just graduated UCLA. She's fragile. Never been around our line of work. You're intimidating her just by existing, and you know how skittish she gets when people raise their voices." I twisted a metal throwing dart off the wall-mounted target beside me, balanced the sharp tip between my thumb and forefinger, and lined it up dead center with his sternum. No hesitation, no waver in my aim. What if I don't care about keeping her comfortable? I asked him, voice low and even. No yelling, no dramatic sobs. Just quiet, unshakable anger I'd bottled up for months, watching him prioritize every tiny panic attack she manufactured over my life-threatening injuries. He caught my wrist mid-throw, pressed my knuckles hard against his chest, so I could feel his heartbeat thudding under the fabric of his shirt, the same chest I'd shielded from a sniper round 3 years prior. "You could take my life right now if you wanted it, and I wouldn't fight you, but leave Clara out of this. Don't touch her, don't corner her, don't scare her. That's the only compromise I'm willing to make." He hauled me against his body then, kissing me rough and desperate across the balcony, dragging me through every room of that estate, couch, dining table closet, master bath shower, like he could fuck away the guilt building between us. When his lips pressed to the scar running down my spine from the iron pipe I'd taken for him years before, he mumbled my name over and over, soft enough I almost believed him. "Neov, don't walk away from me." I locked my fingers into his hair, pulled his head back so I could stare straight into his eyes, cut through the haze of physical intimacy to ask the question that had gnawed at me nonstop since I first spotted Clara in his penthouse. "Who am I to you, Elias?" "Neov Reed," he answered instantly, no pause, no evasion. I dug my nails into his shoulder blade, pushed harder for the truth I'd avoided admitting to myself for too long. "Do you love me?" Silence swallowed the whole room for 10 full heartbeats. He pulled back, brushed a strand of hair off my sweat-slick cheek, and shifted into the transactional tone he used negotiating multi-million-dollar gem deals. Cold and calculated, no warmth left. "Hermes dropped a new Birkin collection last week that I put one on hold for you. Anniversary gift, 7 years working side by side. Come back to the office. Stop fixating on Clara, and we'll pick it up tomorrow." My chest tightened, so sharp I thought my surgical sutures might split open right there on the bathroom tile. He remembered the timeline of our partnership, could rattle off every luxury brand I liked, but couldn't force himself to utter 3 simple words to the woman who died twice over keeping him alive. I pulled away from his touch, sat on the edge of the tub, and stared at the floor tile beneath my bare feet. "Are you actually in love with her?" I asked, throat tight, eyes stinging despite every mercenary training drill teaching me to suppress vulnerability. He shrugged, leaned against the vanity counter, gaze drifting distant like weighing 2 assets on a scale. "You're replaceable for the business, but we don't fit long-term. Clara's built for the quiet domestic life I can't give you." That line landed like a bullet to the skull. I thought back to where I'd come from, how we'd crossed paths to begin with, the blood debt tying us together that he'd conveniently erased once a softer, less damaged alternative wandered into his orbit. I'd worked as a contract sniper back at 24, assigned a hit on Elias before his gem empire ever existed. We'd hunted each other for 3 months straight across Arizona desert highways. Every trap I laid outmaneuvered by his street smarts. Every escape he made orchestrated by my split-second combat reflexes. When my mission failed, my mercenary unit tortured me with waterboarding for weeks before dumping me half-dead in the Mojave Sand to rot. Elias had spotted my unconscious body through a helicopter window, ordered his crew to pull me onto his craft, patched my wounds, and hired me as his full-time bodyguard on the spot. Every scar crisscrossing my frame was a souvenir from protecting him. The missing right eye, replaced with a carbon fiber prosthetic after a blade slash during a restaurant ambush. The 3 broken ribs that had led to my stomach hemorrhage. The long gash slicing my back open, shielding him from a mob hitman's steel pipe. Countless smaller cuts and bullet grazes covering my arms and thighs. But Elias hated looking at them. Always made me drape sheer silk wraps over my torso whenever we slept together, like my trauma was an ugly flaw to hide instead of proof of the loyalty I'd poured into him for 7 straight years. His phone buzzed loud on the marble countertop, and he snatched it up instantly, his entire demeanor softening the second he read the text on the screen. "Hold on, baby. I'll send a driver over with whatever textbooks you need. Don't stress over the thesis deadline. I'll fly out to campus tomorrow to help edit if the professor's writing you hard." His voice dropped to a syrupy, gentle tone I'd never once heard directed my way, even when I was hospitalized fighting for my life. The faint, sweet lilt of Clara's voice drifted through the speaker on his end, thin and breathless, manufactured anxiety layered into every syllable. "Please don't come, Elias. The whole department's terrified of your security detail. Professor Hale already gave me grief for associating with someone in the underground jump trade, and I don't want to risk failing my defense." I stood silent, listening to every word slice through my already frayed resolve. He hung up 30 seconds later, grabbed a thick-bound stack of printed paper off the vanity, and pressed it into my hands without a hint of consideration for my fresh surgical wounds. Clara's undergrad thesis, due at UCLA first thing tomorrow morning. My printer broke at the penthouse, so I printed it all here. Drive it to the campus admin office for her and don't dawdle. She's panicking about late submissions. I stared down at the stack of paper in my grasp, fingers trembling as I processed what he'd just demanded of me. This mountain mansion was mine, the house he'd gifted me for surviving that first desert hit attempt 7 years prior. He'd brought Clara here without asking my permission, used my home as a printing station for her schoolwork, and now expected me, someone recovering from emergency abdominal surgery, to haul her thesis across LA traffic to save her minor academic stress, all while he sat back and coddled her fragile emotions. "This is my house," I said, volume sharp enough to cut through the lazy calm he'd adopted. "You brought her here without clearing it with me first?" He rolled his eyes, crossed his arms over his chest, the dismissive arrogance in his expression making my blood boil hotter than any desert torture cell ever had. "Niev, get your head straight on where you stand. Every brick, every fixture, every acre of this land was purchased with my company's capital. You live here on my generosity. Now deliver that paper before Clara spirals into another panic episode." I didn't argue another word. I grabbed a bottle of prescription birth control pills from the medicine cabinet, twisted the cap open, and swallowed 3 tablets dry, right in front of him. No attempt to hide the motion. I watched his jaw lock tight, dark fury flash across his face. He begged me multiple times to stop taking contraceptives, rambled about starting a family eventually, but now I couldn't stand the thought of carrying a child for a man who valued a stranger's school paper over my post-op recovery. I gripped the thesis stack tight, turned toward the front door, and tore every single page straight down the middle, scattering shredded white paper across the marble entryway floor like confetti. The rage in Elias' eyes ignited instantly, but I didn't pause to let him yell. I grabbed my motorcycle helmet off the hook by the door, sprinted outside, revved the engine on my Harley-Davidson, and peeled out down the mountain driveway before he could block my exit. He chased me for 20 miles across Los Angeles County in his custom Bugatti Chiron, weaving through rush hour traffic to cut me off beside the LA River embankment, tires screeching loud enough to draw stares from pedestrians on the sidewalk. I pulled my helmet off, planted my boots on the asphalt, and spotted Clara standing on the passenger side of a sports car, cheeks streaked with fake tears, lower lip quivering like I just threatened physical harm against her. "Apologize to her," Elias ordered, stepping between us, broad frame blocking my path back to my bike. I tilted my chin up, refused to drop my gaze or back down an inch. "I won't." He stepped forward, wrapped his fingers around my jaw hard enough his fingernails dug into the soft skin under my cheekbone, forcing my head upward so I had no choice but to lock eyes with him. The pain radiated down my neck, twinged the fresh surgical scar on my stomach, but I didn't flinch, didn't beg for him to loosen his grip. "Say you're sorry for destroying her thesis, Niev. Beg her forgiveness, and I'll let you come back to work, back to this house, back to everything we built together." Clara latched onto his bicep instantly, soft, simpering words spilling out in a practiced act of mercy that made my skin crawl. "Elias, let her go. It's my fault for leaving my printing files here, without checking first. I don't mind retyping the whole document overnight. Don't fight with Niev over me. I know how much she means to you. I never want to come between the two of you." That plural, the two of you, landed like shrapnel in my chest. 7 years of blood, sacrifice, near-death escapes, and endless loyalty, and in one single sentence, this girl erased every part of our history to frame herself as a harmless third party caught in the crossfire of our toxic dynamic. Elias' entire rigid, ruthless demeanor melted the second she spoke, all that hardened syndicate authority vanishing into thin air for her manufactured innocence. He released my jaw without another word, every ounce of his attention shifting to wipe her fake tears off her cheeks with his tailored suit sleeve. That's when the first quiet, gut-wrenching realization settled deep in my bones, the seed of a choice I'd soon follow through on without hesitation. He would never pick me, not when Clara's soft, performative vulnerability was on display for him to worship. I lifted my hand to the silver chain wrapped tight around my throat, the necklace he'd forged for me 7 years prior from the bone of his own pinky finger. He'd broken the digit fighting off hitmen to reach my hospital bed, ground the bone into a tiny pendant as a birthday gift back when we had nothing but each other's loyalty to hold on to. I'd never taken it off once in all those years, slept in it, fought gun battles wearing it, survived torture clinging to the weight of it against my skin. I started unclasping the chain, and Elias' entire body locked up, panic flashing across his face, a reaction no rival hitman, federal agent, or syndicate traitor had ever pulled out of him in a decade of underground warfare. He grabbed my wrist mid-motion, grip iron tight, desperate to stop me from removing the one tangible proof of our bond. Don't take it off. What are you doing? I twisted free of his hold, held the bone pendant up between my thumb and forefinger, eyes burning with every unspoken wound he'd inflicted over the past 2 months with Clara. I ruined her thesis. This pendant's worth enough to compensate her for every hour of retyping. Consider it my peace offering to your perfect little undergrad sweetheart. I'm Elias' girlfriend, Nymph. We already flew out to Oregon to meet his family last month. We've talked about moving in together full-time once I graduate. Girlfriend, family visits, long-term cohabitation plans. All terms he'd never once discussed with me in 7 years of constant companionship, not even on the anniversary of the day he pulled me half dead from the Mojave Desert sand. I pieced together the gaps instantly. All those unexplained 2-week business trips every single year where he'd barred every member of his security crew, including me, from accompanying him out of state. Back when I'd followed his SUV past the county line 3 years prior, his private security had intercepted my bike and turned me around, lying about high-risk cartel hits waiting on the highway ahead. He hadn't been traveling for gemstone deals at all. He'd been introducing Clara to his blood relatives, building a domestic future with her while I stayed behind to bleed for his business empire. My vision swam. The residual ache from my stomach surgery spiking so bad I doubled over for half a second, hand pressed hard against my torso to hold back the nausea rising in my throat. I barely registered my own body moving when I raised a fist toward Clara, instinct screaming to lash out at the girl stealing every piece of my life. But Elias stepped fully in front of her, shielding her frame with his own body like I was a lethal enemy out to murder her. That single split-second motion snapped the last thread of attachment I'd clung to for 7 long years. I set the bone pendant down on the asphalt at Clara's sneakers, turned my back on both of them, and started walking toward my motorcycle without a single glance backward. Elias' voice carried over the hum of traffic behind me, sharp and desperate, the first crack in his unshakable composure I'd ever witnessed outside of a life-or-death ambush. If you walk away right now, don't ever step foot in my warehouse, my estate, or my business again. I'll cut every contract tied to your security firm, blacklist your name across every West Coast syndicate network. I didn't slow my pace, didn't acknowledge the threat. He sprinted to cut me off, hands clamping down on both my shoulders to hold me in place, panic fraying every edge of his carefully maintained cool exterior. One apology on your knees to Clara, and all of this disappears. You can come back to everything we built together, no hard feelings. I shoved his hands off my shoulders, exhaustion heavy in every bone, every old scar throbbing in unison with my broken heart. I'm not coming back. You don't need me anymore, Elias. Your new girl handles all the soft, quiet parts of life you never let me touch, and I'm tired of bleeding just to earn a fraction of your attention. He stood frozen on the river embankment as I swung the leg over my Harley's seat, watching me rev the engine and pull away down the highway, Clara clinging to his arm and whispering encouragement for him to chase after me like a well-rehearsed script. I glanced in my rearview mirror once, caught sight of him standing motionless, no attempt to follow, and understood the truth he'd buried under every empty promise and luxury gift for years. He thought I'd crawl back to him by sunrise, just like I had after every prior fight over his rotating string of meaningless flings. This time I wouldn't. The wind bit raw against my cheeks as I gunned the Harley away from Elias and Clara on the river embankment. I didn't look back once, even when his Bugatti's headlights burned bright in my rearview for a quarter mile before fading behind tree cover. Every muscle in my torso screamed, fresh surgical stitches pulling tight under my leather riding jacket, the ghost ache of 3 fractured ribs and a hemorrhaged stomach gnawing at me with every bump in the asphalt. In my jacket pocket, my fingers closed around the empty birth control pill bottle, a quiet reminder of what I'd just walked away from: 7 years of blood, near-death rescues, silent compromise, and a love that only existed when there wasn't a softer, less damaged woman vying for Elias' focus. I'd barely merged onto the northbound on-ramp toward the Angeles Forest Estate when my mirrors flared with harsh high beams. 3 black unmarked SUVs boxed me in from every angle, one tight to my front bumper, 2 flanking my sides, tires cutting me off until I had no open lane to swerve into. My training kicked in instantly, muscle memory overriding the hollow grief clogging my throat. I slammed on the brakes, skidding the Harley sideways across 2 lanes of empty highway, boots scraping asphalt to steady the bike before I fully killed the engine. Masked men poured out of each vehicle in synchronized formation, tactical vests, holster handguns, batons swinging loose at their hips. A dozen bodies circled me, forming an unbreakable perimeter, and I knew without a second guess this hit wasn't random street cartel work. Only one rival syndicate had the manpower and coordination to stage a mid-afternoon highway ambush on a former mercenary of my caliber, Jude Mercer's crew, the faction Elias had spent years waging brutal underground war against over jade and diamond shipping routes. My palm slid down to the concealed .38 strap to my thigh holster, fingers wrapping around the cool metal grip, ready to fire the second anyone lunged. I braced for the first blow, waiting for the lead attacker to close the gap, until the rear van's side door slid open slow, and a man stepped out into the golden California sunset light, tall, lean, wire-rimmed glasses perched on his nose, tailored cream linen suit a stark contrast to the armed goons surrounding him. The second our eyes locked, every breath stalled in my lungs. Jude Mercer. The boy I dragged through gunfire in the mercenary camps when we were kids. The kid who'd snuck through water torture cell bars night after night to slip me bread and antibiotics when I'd failed my hit assignment on Elias. The person I'd spent 7 years convincing myself was long dead, buried somewhere unmarked in the Mojave Desert after our unit split apart. I'd shot him once, 5 years prior, during a turf war between Elias' gem operation and Jude's import ring, bullet buried deep in his left shoulder, and I'd spent countless nights replaying that split-second decision, haunted by the thought I'd killed the only person who'd ever cared about me without asking me to erase every scar, every sharp edge of myself to fit his ideal partner mold. He pushed past his armed men, waving a hand to hold them back before they could advance on me, soft, low voice cutting through the hum of idling SUV engines, a tone no one else on this earth had ever used for me. Stand down. No one touches her. His crew froze mid-step, batons and guns hanging loose at their sides, and I stared at him, numb, half expecting this to be a hallucination spawned from my post-op pain meds and the heartbreak of walking out on Elias. I lowered my handgun just an inch, eyes locked on the faint, silvery scar peeking out from the collar of his linen shirt, the bullet wound I'd left in his shoulder all those years ago. That mark was real, unmistakable, proof this wasn't some fever dream. Jude stopped 3 feet in front of my Harley, close enough I could smell the faint cedar cologne he'd worn since we were 16 stuck in that hellish mercenary training camp together. His gaze swept over me slow, cataloging the haggard dark circles under my eyes, the tight protective hunch I held over my stomach to mask my surgical injury, the empty space around my throat where Elias' bone pendant used to rest. Sadness flickered across his face, sharp and unhidden, no performative softness like Clara's manufactured vulnerability, raw, unfiltered sorrow for the damage I'd let Elias carve into me over 7 wasted years. You let him break you that thoroughly, he said quietly, not an accusation, just a quiet observation that split open every wound I'd spent months suppressing. I tracked Elias' convoy to the river 10 minutes ago, watched you hand over that bone pendant like it meant nothing to you. I tightened my grip on the Harley's handlebars, jaw set hard to hold back the flood of tears threatening to spill. It didn't mean anything anymore, not after he picked her over me. Jude tilted his head, curious, the faint ghost of a bitter smile tugging at his lips behind his glasses. The undergrad girl, Clara Hale. The one he's been hiding from you for 2 years, flying out to Oregon to meet his family with while you stayed behind fending off cartel hitmen and stabbing surgeons to save his life. A sharp jolt of shock shot through my chest. I'd only learned about Clara's family visits 10 minutes prior, on that river embankment, yet Jude already knew every detail of Elias' secret double life. The first quiet question bloomed in my head. How long had Jude been watching Elias? Watching me? How much of my 7 years with him had Jude witnessed from the shadows without me ever noticing? Before I could voice the question, Jude stepped closer, extending one hand out toward me, palm up, no weapon, no threat, just an open offer I hadn't accepted from anyone in over a decade. Come with me, Niev. Leave Elias and all of his messy, one-sided loyalty behind for good. My compound's hidden deep in the San Bernardino Mountains, fully secured, no cartel trackers, no Elias security goons sniffing around the perimeter. I've had a guest suite ready for you for months, just waiting for the day you finally walked away from him. I hesitated, glancing past Jude at his armed crew lined up behind him, mind racing through every worst-case scenario drilled into me during mercenary training. Jude was Elias' biggest business rival. Logically, taking me hostage would cripple Elias' entire security division overnight, hand Jude complete control of West Coast gem shipping routes. Every instinct screamed this was a trap, a carefully laid ambush to use me as leverage against the man I'd just abandoned. But when I met Jude's eyes again, I didn't see the cold, calculating glint of a syndicate boss out for power. Only the scared, hungry teenage boy I'd shielded from live firing ranges and camp beatings all those years ago, the kid who'd risked fatal punishment to sneak medicine to my torture cell. Before I could give him an answer, 2 of Elias' black SUVs rounded the bend behind us, sirens blaring, floodlights blazing. Elias had chased after me after all, and he'd brought half his security team to retrieve me, or drag me back by force if necessary. Jude's posture shifted instantly, sharp, lethal tension rolling off him as he signaled his men to form a defensive wall between me and Elias' incoming convoy. I watched Elias jump out of the lead vehicle, Clara clinging tight to his arm, her tear-streaked face lighting up when she spotted me, feigned worry dripping from every word she called across the highway divide. Elias, make her come home with us. I don't want her caught up in any fighting between your crews. It's too dangerous for her. Her fake concern curdled in my stomach, and Elias' gaze locked straight onto me, rage and desperation warring across his features as he spotted Jude standing inches from my motorcycle. He took 3 storming steps forward, security guards rushing to flank him, hand hovering over the holstered pistol at his hip. Jude Mercer, get your hands off her. This doesn't concern you. Niamh's mine. She's part of my operation, and you have 0 right to intercept her. Jude laughed, a low, hollow sound, stepping fully in front of my bike to shield my body from Elias' line of sight, blocking me away from the man who'd spent 7 years taking everything I had to give before tossing me aside for a college student's performative fragility. Yours? You treat her like disposable muscle until a soft-spoken 22-year-old girl blinks her eyes at you, then toss every sacrifice she's ever made out the window to cater to Clara's trivial academic stress. You sent a woman fresh out of emergency stomach surgery across LA traffic to deliver her thesis, made her beg for basic respect, forced her to choose between swallowing her pride or walking away entirely. Don't pretend you own her, Elias. You never valued enough to deserve that claim. Elias' face turned crimson with fury, stepping forward like he planned to barrel past Jude's guards to grab hold of me himself. Clara latched onto his forearm hard, yanking him backward, her voice lifting into a trembling whine designed to pull all of Elias' attention straight back to her, exactly as it had every single time I needed him over the past 2 months. Elias, please don't fight over me, or Neef, I'm scared of all these guns. Can we just go back to the penthouse? I still have half my thesis to retype tonight, and my anxiety's spiking so bad I can barely breathe. Her manufactured panic hit Elias like a reset button. Every ounce of rage he directed at Jude and me vanished instantly, his entire focus redirecting to patting her back, murmuring soft reassurances against the top of her head, completely abandoning the fight to win me back that he'd staged this entire security retrieval for. I watched the exchange numb, a second-crushing realization sinking into my bones. No matter how much Elias begged me to apologize, no matter how many luxury gifts he promised to buy me, Clara's smallest manufactured distress would always override every piece of my pain, every sacrifice I'd laid at his feet. I would never, ever be his first priority. Jude leaned down beside my Harley, voice quiet enough only I could hear it over the chaos of shouting crew members and Clara's shaky sobs. You see it now, don't you? He'll always drop everything to soothe her fake breakdowns, even when you're the one bleeding from life-threatening injuries. Come with me. I won't make you shrink yourself to fit some tiny domestic box. All your scars, your sharp temper, your mercenary past. None of it scares me. I knew every part of you long before Elias ever crossed your path. I glanced between Jude's steady, unguarded gaze and Elias, who'd completely forgotten my existence to wrap Clara in his coat and lead her back toward his Bugatti, already barking orders at his security team to clear a path home for her. There was no longer a single shred of doubt left lingering in my chest. I swung one leg off the Harley, set the kickstand down, and locked the bike's ignition before tossing the key onto the asphalt at Elias' feet, a silent final goodbye to the 7 years we'd shared. Jude's hand found mine, warm and steady, his fingers lacing gently through mine like he'd spent years practicing the motion. He guided me toward his waiting van, his men parting to clear a path, none daring to meet my eyes as we passed through their formation. I didn't glance back at Elias or Clara once as Jude slid the van's side door shut behind us, sealing me away from the life I'd just permanently left behind. The interior of the van was quiet, soundproofed against the shouting and sirens outside, leather seats lined with soft throw blankets, a cold bottle of my favorite citrus soda waiting on the center console, another tiny detail that sent a prickle of unease down my spine. How long had Jude been tracking my habits, memorizing small things like my drink preference, my motorcycle route, Elias' secret trips with Clara? Before I could voice the question hanging heavy on my tongue, Jude settled into the seat beside me, sliding a small first aid kit across the console toward my lap. I saw you clutching your stomach back on the embankment, your surgical incision straining from all the stress today. Let me clean any fresh tears in the stitches before we drive up to the mountain compound. I hesitated, then lifted the hem of my leather jacket, exposing the fresh, pink surgical bandage wrapped tight around my midsection. Jude's expression softened as he stared at the wound, his fingers gentle as he peeled back the adhesive tape to inspect the inflamed skin beneath, no flicker of revulsion or discomfort like Elias always showed when confronted with my injuries and scars. He dabbed antiseptic along the raw edges slow, careful not to jostle my tender ribs, speaking in a low, reflective tone as he worked. I watched you take that steel pipe to the back shielding Elias 3 years ago, sat outside the hospital for 40 straight days while you recovered, just waiting for a chance to talk to you. But Elias posted armed guards at every exit, threatened to put a bullet in my skull if I so much as stepped foot on hospital grounds near your room. My throat tightened, processing the hidden layer of Elias' possessiveness I'd never uncovered until this moment. Elias hadn't just hidden Clara from me all those years. He'd actively blocked Jude, the only person who'd ever loved me unconditionally, from reaching me at my lowest, most vulnerable points. A small, bitter laugh escaped me as I stared down at Jude's hand still tending to my stitches. He always said you were a lethal enemy, someone I needed to avoid at all costs to stay safe. Made it sound like you wanted nothing more than to kill me to cripple his business. I was sent to eliminate you once, years back, direct orders from our old mercenary unit's command. I had a dozen perfect opportunities to slit your throat, plant a bullet in your skull while you slept beside Elias in that mountain estate of yours. I never took a single shot. Couldn't bring myself to hurt the girl who once dragged my unconscious body through a minefield to save my life. The van engine rumbled to life beneath us, pulling away from the highway standoff as Jude pressed a fresh sterile bandage over my stomach wound, securing it with gentle tape. Outside the tinted windows, I watched Elias' convoy shrink smaller and smaller in the distance, the figure of Clara tucked safely against his chest, the last thing I saw before the trees swallowed the highway whole. Jude leaned back against the seat beside me, sliding the citrus soda into my open palm, a faint, tender smile tugging at his mouth. You don't have to make any permanent decisions tonight. Just rest at my compound, heal your injuries, breathe without waiting for Elias to pick someone else over you. Take all the time you need to process everything that just happened. I twisted the soda cap open, taking a slow sip, the sharp, sweet flavor grounding me through the whirlwind of revelation and heartbreak swirling inside my head. As we wound our way up the mountain highway toward Jude's hidden estate, one unshakable thought echoed on a loop through my mind. 7 years I'd spent begging Elias for a fraction of the care Jude had offered me in less than an hour. No demands, no ultimatums, no requirement to dim every harsh part of myself to earn his kindness. But beneath the relief of escaping Elias' one-sided love lingered a quiet, gnawing suspicion. Jude's endless patience, his perfect awareness of every detail of my life, his hidden history as a mercenary hitman ordered to kill me. None of it was as simple as a long-lost childhood friend rushing to rescue me from heartbreak. There was a secret buried deep inside his past, one he hadn't dared share with me yet, a secret that would unravel everything I thought I knew about the boy I'd protected all those years in the training camps. 3 years slipped past in soft, unrushed days in a small sun-drenched rental cottage outside Santa Barbara, far from LA's underground gem syndicates, far from Elias Voss's mountain mansion, far from every bullet scar and blood debt I carried for most of my life. My son, Liam, my child with Jude, was 3 years old now, round-cheeked, prone to clinging to my legs during thunderstorms, his tiny palms smudged with finger paint every single evening. This life was nothing like the brutal, high-stakes existence I'd known for 20 years, and for the first time ever, I didn't wake each morning waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'd spent those 3 years convinced Jude was dead. I'd watched him step backward off the peak of Angeles Crest Mountain, vanish into endless cloud cover, no body ever recovered after 3 days of search crews combing every ravine and rocky ledge. I'd locked myself inside his abandoned San Bernardino compound for 2 weeks straight after that day, sorting through the locked wooden box hidden in his study wall, uncovering the full, horrifying truth he'd hidden from me our entire reunion. Our old mercenary unit had marked me for execution the moment I failed my hit on Elias all those years prior. Jude had been forced to inherit the West Coast Syndicate Empire as a cover mission, his sole official order to hunt and kill me to satisfy the unit's brutal leadership. Every chance he'd had to end my life, ambushes, late nights at Elias' estate, quiet hours alone in his mountain guest suite, he deliberately sabotaged his own assignment, choosing to protect me instead of obeying the commands drilled into him since he was 12 years old. The torture chamber hidden behind his study was the unit's punishment for his repeated refusal to complete the kill order. Every lash, every chemical burn on his skin was proof he'd suffered endless agony rather than harm me. The final, crushing secret I found tucked in his journal beneath the stack of photographs filled only with my image. The International Anti-Mercenary Task Force had spent years coordinating with Jude to lure the entire rogue unit to a remote overseas training compound, staging a full military raid to wipe their operation off the map for good. Jude's leap off the cliff had never been a suicide attempt. It was a meticulously planned fake death, a disguise to slip overseas undetected and coordinate the takedown without the unit growing suspicious and launching an immediate hit squad to hunt me down. He'd hidden a parachute strapped beneath his linen suit jacket the day we stood atop that mountain, a detail he'd never dared breathe to me, terrified I'd see his mission as betrayal and shut him out forever. I'd carried that grief like a stone in my chest for 36 months, raising Liam alone through every doctor's appointment, every teething night, every first wobbly step, convinced the only person who'd ever loved all my broken parts was lost to me forever. I'd accepted Jude's absence as permanent fate, resolved to build a gentle small life for my son and myself without relying on anyone's protection ever again. Until the night the thunderstorm rolled in, the power cutting out mid-dinner, 2 masked intruders breaking through my cottage back door with kitchen knives clutched in their fists, fugitive former cartel enforcers who'd escaped the nationwide roundup after Jude's overseas raid, tracking me down to settle old scores with anyone tied to Elias and Jude's syndicate wars. My combat muscle memory flared instantly, but Liam's frightened whimper froze me halfway to grabbing the kitchen blade off the counter. I couldn't risk my boy caught in the crossfire. I stuffed him into the locked linen storage closet, ready to face both attackers alone, fully prepared to take a blade to the torso to shield my son, until a familiar blur of movement crashed through the back screen door, one single precise kick sending the first assailant flying across the linoleum floor. I knew that gate before I even lifted my head. Jude stood there, rain dripping off his dark hair, wire-rimmed glasses smudged with storm water, his frame broader, his shoulders lined with faint new scars from the overseas military operation, alive, solid, real. He subdued the second intruder in 2 quick trained strikes, binding their wrists with zip ties he pulled from his jacket pocket, never taking his eyes off the linen closet where Liam huddled crying. Once both men were secured on the floor waiting for local police dispatch, he crossed the room in 3 long strides, yanking open the closet door and lifting my trembling boy into his arms without hesitation, pressing soft, quiet reassurances into the top of Liam's rain-soaked hair. I stood frozen, every unspoken grief, every late-night breakdown, every quiet what if I'd whispered to the empty air over 3 years crashing over me all at once. When the police arrived to take the fugitives away, the cottage fell silent again, only the distant crash of thunder echoing off the coastal hills outside our windows. I grabbed Jude's wrist before he could step away, my voice cracking raw after years of suppressed sorrow. "You've been here the whole time, haven't you?" I whispered, staring hard into his eyes, demanding honesty after every secret he'd stacked on top of me. Every time I needed a stranger's umbrella during rain, every doctor who prioritized my prenatal checkups, every cafe worker who slipped me free lemonade when I was heat exhausted with a newborn. All of it was you, hiding in the shadows, too scared to show your face. Jude set Liam down on the living room rug with a stuffed bear to calm his nerves, then turned to face me fully. No more walls, no half-truths held back. He reached out to brush rainwater off my cheek, his fingers shaking faintly, the weight of 3 years of separation heavy in every slow movement. "I couldn't reveal myself to you, not until the entire mercenary unit was neutralized," he admitted, voice rough with unspent guilt. "If word leaked back to the remaining commanders that I faked my death to protect you, they would have sent an army of hitmen straight to this cottage before I could finish coordinating the overseas raid. Every small, quiet favor I arranged from afar was the only way I could keep you and Liam safe without blowing my cover. I watched you raise our son alone every single day, and every second I spent hidden away felt like punishment for lying to you. I didn't scream, didn't rage, didn't pull away from his touch. All the anger I'd carried for his deception melted away the second I processed his full motivation. Every secret, every fake death, every year spent hiding from me was rooted in a single driving fear, losing me and our child to the unit's endless cycle of violence. He'd chosen to carry all the pain and deception alone to shield us from lethal retaliation, a sacrifice no one had ever made for me before. I lifted my palm to cup his jaw, wiping the damp rain from his skin, a quiet forgiveness settling deep in my bones. Don't ever hide from me like that again. If you lie to me this thoroughly once more, I won't walk away. I'll make sure you never get a single moment of peace for the rest of your life. Jude's lips tugged upward into the soft, relieved smile I hadn't seen in 3 years, leaning forward to press a gentle kiss to my forehead, then my mouth, slow and unrushed, no desperation, no fear hanging between us anymore. If I ever deceive you again, I'll hand you every weapon I own to use against me. Getting to come home to you and Liam after 3 years of hiding is worth every punishment you could ever give. That night, we sat on the living room floor with Liam curled between us, watching rain streak down the cottage windows, talking through every hidden layer of his overseas mission, every torture he endured under the mercenary unit's leadership, every quiet moment he'd spent watching our small coastal cottage from the tree line just to catch a glimpse of me and our son living safely. The full weight of the past decade's blood and betrayal finally lifted from my shoulders. The rogue mercenary unit was completely dismantled, all warrants cleared from both Jude's and my records, every old debt erased for good. We were finally free, no more hit orders, no more syndicate wars, no more enemies hunting our family. A week after Jude's return, a black luxury sedan pulled up the gravel driveway of our cottage. Elias Voss stepped out alone, his tailored suits faded, dark permanent bags carved beneath his eyes, the sharp, confident edge that once defined LA's most powerful gem tycoon completely stripped away. He clutched the brass key to the Angeles Forest mountain mansion I'd once called home in his palm, his shoulders hunched like a man carrying a weight he could never unload. I stepped out onto the front porch to meet him, Jude lingering silently in the doorway behind me, one hand resting light on my waist, a quiet, silent promise of protection. Elias didn't glance at Jude, his gaze locked only on me, raw, unfiltered regret thick in every word he spoke, laying bare the core motivation behind every cruel choice he'd made 7 years prior, his misplaced obligation to Clara, blind gratitude clouding his judgment until he lost the only person who'd ever laid down her life for him. Clara and I split 6 months after you left, he said flatly, tossing the mansion key onto the wooden porch step between us. Once the mercenary unit's threats faded and I no longer needed to keep her sheltered from syndicate violence, her manufactured anxiety attacks vanished entirely. All those panic episodes, all the helpless fragility she showed only when I was focused on you, every bit of it was a calculated performance to monopolize my attention. She'd spent years studying how to weaponize soft vulnerability to push every other person out of my life. Once I stopped catering to every minor emotional outburst, she packed her bags and moved back to Oregon, chasing another wealthy businessman to latch onto. I nodded slowly, the final confirmation of a truth I'd suspected the day she'd cried over her thesis, while Elias ignored my fresh life-threatening surgery. Her entire identity as a helpless broken girl had been a tool, not genuine trauma, and Elias had fallen for every act for years, blinded by misplaced gratitude for her deceased parents. I never should have chosen her over you that day at the river ambush, Elias continued, voice cracking, tears brimming at his lash line. I thought I owed her constant care for her family's sacrifice years prior, and I stupidly convinced myself your strength meant you didn't need the same tenderness I gave her. I didn't realize strength doesn't equal invulnerability. You bled for me countless times, and I repaid that loyalty by making you beg for basic respect. Every night for 3 years I've stood outside that empty mountain estate, waiting for you to drive back up the road, knowing full well you'd never return. He gestured toward the mansion, key lying at my feet, a hollow attempt to offer me the one gift he once thought would fix all our brokenness. The estate's yours, free and clear. No strings attached, all paperwork filed to transfer full ownership to your name. It's the least I can give you to make amends for everything I put you through. I glanced down at the brass key glinting on the porch wood, then shook my head, pushing it back toward him with the toe of my boot. I don't want it. That house holds every memory of the 7 years I spent shrinking myself small to fit your idea of what a partner should be. Keep it, sell it, give it away. It means nothing to me anymore. Elias stared at me, stunned, clearly expecting me to leap at the chance to reclaim the luxury life he'd once offered me. What do you want from me, then? Tell me how I can fix this. There's nothing to fix, I answered evenly.